Hello and welcome to Business 7, your weekly program on financial, business and economic news in Namibia and the rest of Africa. We have an interesting program which we'll start with just after this.
Thank you so much to FNB for this opportunity. Thank you so much to FNB. What an experience. I never got to do shopping in 5 minutes, but look at all this.
It's been a busy week in Africa. Let's take a look at the 5 stories that made headlines the past week in Africa as supplied by Reuters.
Here are 5 business stories making headlines in sub-Saharan Africa this week. BRICS foreign ministers asserted their bloc's ambition to rival Western powers. But talks in South Africa were overshadowed by the question of whether Russia's president would be arrested if he attended a summit in August. Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor said on Thursday South Africa was considering options if Vladimir Putin turned up in Johannesburg. He's the subject of a war crimes arrest warrant issued by the International Criminal Court, and as a member of the ICC, South Africa would theoretically be required to arrest him. Zimbabwe wants its lithium miners to work towards producing battery-grade lithium locally, and could impose a tax on exports of lithium concentrate in future. Mines Minister Winston Chitando said on Wednesday. Zimbabwe hopes its significant reserves of lithium, a battery mineral that's vital to the global drive for cleaner energy, will help revive its ailing economy. Gambia has hired an unnamed US law firm to explore legal action over toxic cough syrups imported from India, according to the Justice Minister. At least 70 children in Gambia, most under 5 years old, died from acute kidney injury last year. A government-backed investigation found the contaminated medicines were very likely to have caused their deaths. Indian drug maker Maiden Pharmaceuticals made the cough syrup and has denied wrongdoing. Long fuel queues returned to Nigerian cities as uncertainty over the fuel subsidy prompted panic buying. New President Bola Tinubu has vowed to scrap the subsidy. And on Wednesday, the NNPC, Nigeria's state oil firm, hiked petrol prices to $1.21 a litre from about 40 cents. There are fears that will hurt businesses that rely on generators and push up transport fares. And finally, good news for African farmers, as consumer goods giants like Unilever say they're sourcing more of their raw materials on the continent. Various factors are making it hard to import goods to Africa, including rising energy and raw material costs, as well as supply disruptions and currency volatility. That's why Unilever says it's pivoting to locally sourcing for products sold on the continent, even if they aren't cheaper.
It was mentioned in one of our highlights the importance of the latest move by Unilever. Now, Reuters filed a more detailed report on the issue.
Busari Kasala used to live in fear that his cassava would spoil before it got to market. Now the Nigerian farmer says his main concern is keeping up with growing demand from Unilever. The consumer goods giant, behind brands including Knorr, Hellmann's and Ben & Jerry's, says it's pivoting to African suppliers for its operations on the continent. And that's good news for Kasali.
They collect the cassava from us all the time. Once we load the van and we take it to them, they weigh it and give us our money. Now we are very confident to plant as much as we wish to plant because we do not have any problem selling it. We know where to sell it.
Many global companies have been grappling with rising energy and raw material costs, a consequence of the war in Ukraine and the hangover from the global health crisis. They've also faced supply disruptions and wild currency volatility, making it hard to import goods to Africa. Unilever says that's why it's trying to source locally for products sold on the continent, even if they aren't actually cheaper. Casale's cassava plants are used to make sorbitol, a key ingredient of toothpaste, replacing supplies from China. The crop is processed by firms like Sultry International, which then supplies Nestlé and Danone, as well as Unilever. Founder Oluyemisi Ironloy says turnover should at least double this year, but worries that African farms just can't produce enough.
We still don't have enough. We are still operating at about 55-60% today because of raw material. So raw material is a challenge. Farmers need to be properly funded for raw material to be produced at a level at which you can increase our capacity to about 80%.
Cassava producers aren't the only ones to benefit. In South Africa, Unilever is sourcing herbs and spices for products like its curry blends and stock cubes. Those ingredients would previously have come from India. That just leaves African farmers with the challenge of meeting demand.
The landscape of financial reporting has changed considerably over the last few years, with terms like ESG increasingly more important. Joining us in the studio to discuss this is Marlize Horn. She is the executive of Brand and Corporate Affairs at Capricorn Group. She's absolutely no stranger in the Business 7 studio. Welcome, Marlize Horn. Thank you for joining us again. Before we start our conversation, which is about an event you had yesterday, allow me for Business 7 and NMH Market Watch, everybody, to congratulate Capricorn on a decade of being listed on the Namibian Stock Exchange.
Morning, Jamari. Yes, thanks for having me. It's really a milestone for us. In fact, on the 20th of June, we rang the bell in 2013, a decade ago, and that was really a big milestone in the history of our group.
Not just in the history of our group, it was a milestone in the history of the NSX. A milestone in the history of Namibia. I remember I covered the event and the excitement when you first released your IPO. Everybody wanted to know what it was about. And yes, it was just a great day because it was really the first time that we had a fully Namibian financial institution that went to the stock exchange.
No, it is, and it, reflecting on that time, the public offering was a massive success. It was 3.5 times oversubscribed. Everyone wanted a piece of Bank Windhoek.
Yes.
At that time, we were still known as Bank Windhoek Holdings.
That's right.
We only rebranded to Capricorn Group in 2016. So yes, and up to today, 99.4% of our shareholding is still held by Namibian shareholders or Namibian residents.
Yes, and indeed, you are still the only locally listed financial group that can claim that.
Yes.
So, congratulations. It's a very fond memory. I was very honored to have been able to cover that story. But yesterday you had an event as part of the celebration of a decade on the stock exchange. What was it about?
Yes, we had a session, an investor relations session with around 40 business people from various listed companies, but also non-listed companies. And we just discussed the decade of change for Namibian investors. We had a wide range of speakers there. Brian van Rensburg from PSG did a very interesting overview of the stock exchange, the value that has been created by the listed companies over the decade. in terms of paying out of dividends, etc. And Sarah from GIPF, who manages the investment portfolio, also just gave us some perspectives from an investor. What do they look at? And that is where the concept of ESG was also brought into the discussion. And then, we just reflected on the changing landscape, because there is a lot of changes that has been on the horizon in the last decade.
That is certainly so. And ESG, one of the terms that are increasingly being thrown around. In layman's terms, what is ESG?
Yeah, I also, only came to hear about ESG 5 or so years ago, and only recently started to really unpack it. But it is about, it's a business framework. It's about corporate accountability in the space of environmental, social, and governance. So as a financial services group, we have investors. So investors use ESG really as a tool to assess our sustainability, to look at whether we as Capricorn Group is a good investment. But also credit rating agencies use it as a tool, to measure our performance. So it's one of the things they look at. So it's really about corporate accountability and, showing your positive impact, but with providing of data.
Yes.
You cannot claim to be in line with the ESG criteria if you don't have data to back it up. And that is the data that your analysts, your investors, and the credit rating agencies will be looking at.
In terms of reporting, how has the landscape changed in Namibia over the past couple of years?
Yeah, Jo-Marie, there are so many frameworks and standards that a listed company needs to comply and adhere to. And then you have King 4, etc., for NAM code for Namibian listed companies. But, from an integrated reporting perspective, so we moved from annual reporting to integrated reporting. And there's the international integrated reporting framework that you have to comply with, looking at your materiality, your 6 capitals. But now recently, there's been a global movement in looking at all the reporting standards and frameworks and to consolidate. And much like for the financial side, you have the IFRS.
Yes.
They are looking at introducing for the non-financial information in your report a similar IFRS type of standard and framework. And the latest information I have is that by the end of this year, there will be 2 new global standards for non-financial reporting. So companies like Capricorn Group need to make sure that we are aware of these changes, the impact thereof, because it is about disclosure and transparency. You can't just write a story in your integrated report. You need to back it up with data. And you need to put in place processes in your organization to collect the data.
But that's, from an investor point of view, that's very reassuring, because at the moment, just taking a normal integrated annual report, there is so much information in it, and you can really see what the company that you've invested in is all about, what its ethics, what is driving it, etc.
And the problem is often that companies do greenwashing, for example. So they talk about sustainability, yes. They write a nice story. We are for the environment, we are steward for the environment, but there's no data to back it up. So all these new standards and frameworks will, and if you follow ESG, you won't be able to do that greenwashing anymore.
Coming back to Capricorn and ESG, bringing it closer to home, what is your approach to ESG?
Like I said, we really only in the past 2-3 years started to really unpack what it means for us as a business. Like I said, ESG is for environmental, social, and governance. So from a governance perspective, we have a long, solid track record and history around our corporate governance, you know, the policies, processes, risk management frameworks we have in place. So we are very mature in terms of the governance side of ESG. Social, we often confuse social with the likes of a foundation like the Capricorn Foundation, but actually the S of ESG, the social, is more around your impact as a business on your employees, your labor force, fair labor practices, on your supply chain, but also the community. So, you know, we are also very confident that as far as the S is concerned, we are very mature. Where our focus is now is on the environmental side. We have been known in the Bank Windhoek space, you know, with our sustainability bond, etc. So from a Bank Windhoek perspective, we've made great strides on that. And from a group perspective, you know, for us, we want to just strengthen our focus on sustainability, all aspects of sustainability, including the environment, and you know, also involve our employees through simple awareness around waste of paper and electricity and water. I mean, we just heard now about the city of Windhoek, the issue with water. So, you know, that's the type of basic things that we are doing and can improve on.
You mentioned the sustainability bond. That, of course, was another
first,
a milestone. I remember waking up that morning and somebody had forwarded me on social media that photograph on the NASDAQ and on Times Square, and you realize, wow, Namibia in New York, you know, that was just an amazing initiative.
Yeah, no, so we have a good track record. We've been participating in the COP 26
That's right.
and 27, and we will be at the COP 28 in Dubai at the end of the year. So we really are committed in that regard.
Marlize, thank you very much once again for joining us in the studio. Thank you for the work Capricorn is doing in Namibia and its role in securing a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Every day, you make choices that make you legendary. Journey together with us on the path to securing your legacy as a member of the League of Legends. With the Select Platinum Bundle Fee Premium Bank offering, you will access tools that will enable you to thrive. If you earn 850,000 Namibian dollars per annum or more, you can apply for this offering today via bankwindhoek.com.na for only 447 Namibian dollars per month. Bank Windhoek, a member of Capricorn Group.
The Namibia Investment and Promotion Development Board recently launched its Technovation social initiative for 2023. Let's take a look at what it's all about.
To complement the current national efforts, the NIPDB established what we call the K2G, Technovation Social, which, as was mentioned, is a biannual event. We did not have it last year, but we decided we'll host it in Q1 of this year. But please hold us to it, that next year, Chaze, we shall not miss the 2024 variant. I think the difference between the very first one that we held when we were all quite new in office and this event is that we want to do things a little bit differently. So for the 2023 variant, we've positioned it as a scouting mission of CCI talent in Namibia from all corners of the country.
So as one of the leading financial institutions in Namibia, we're committing to associating with entrepreneurs that are going to be sustainable. So Technovation breeds creativity, and we know creativity breeds opportunities. So you want entrepreneurs that are going to create employment, that are going to have sustainable businesses that are going to exist even in the long run. We want to associate with this kind of entrepreneurs. We want to support them, I think from a financial service provider perspective, we want to coach these guys so that they'll be able to provide jobs for the others and be able to create businesses that will exist even in the longer future. So in terms of challenges, I think creatives face a lot of challenges. Their line of business is not identified or seen or perceived as an actual business. So I think we need to create a platform as Technovation, a platform where we can showcase creatives and identify creatives that are going to create sustainable businesses, support them, and just ensure that their businesses are sound enough to be able to even go to a global stage.
Connection. It's in the human touch, the feeling of belonging. It inspires us and empowers us, creates clarity from complexity. It starts new conversations, unlocks the power of advice, and makes an impact on your life. At Alex Forbes, we pioneer insight to provide you with advice that connects your decisions of today to your impact tomorrow.
That's it from Business 7 this week. We'll see you again next week. We're playing out with a real feel-good story and an example of the positive role that business leaders can play. This video is supplied by Reuters.
It was 3 weeks since Anna L. gave birth to twins in Democratic Republic of Congo's capital, Kinshasa. But the 16-year-old still hadn't left hospital. Unable to pay her medical costs, she was effectively being held hostage. Then entered a woman Anna L. had never met before to hand doctors $130 and settle the bill. This is Grace Mbongi Umek, a businesswoman who's made it her mission to free new mothers trapped by their maternity debts.
As far as my objective is concerned, it's clear. I want this to stop. I want women in my country to give birth in good conditions and not be held hostage because they cannot pay.
Like many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo has no universal health coverage. While President Felix Tshisekedi's government is ratifying a law to make health services free for the vulnerable, the minimum $40 required to give birth in a health facility is out of reach for many. According to the World Bank, more than 60% of Congo's population lives on less than $2.15 a day. Cash-strapped hospitals say they're forced to keep patients until they've paid in full.
So I said to myself, why not help these women have their fundamental rights? The right of a woman not to be detained in a maternity hospital just because she's given birth.
Umek, who owns shares in several security companies, set up a foundation in 2017 to help mothers with unpaid medical bills. She says she donates up to $3,500 a month. At Kinshasa's Bethesda Hospital, Anna L. and 2 of her roommates uttered their thanks and wrapped up their babies. Unburdened by debt, they can finally take their children home.